What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favalli coming at you with yet another 2024-2025 NBA look ahead. We are on to the Houston Rockets, which means it's time to speak with the homie Salman Ali. Covers the Houston Rockets for Red Nation Hoops, does a fantastic job of doing so. Follow him on the Twitter machine at Salman Ali NBA. That's at SalmanAlinba. Also subscribe to Red Nation Hoops. The link to that will be in the YouTube and podcast description. Going to cover everything, all Houston Rockets, a really electric team when you look at the talent that they have in place and the future that they could have moving forward. So I'm excited to get to chat with him. And if this is your first time around these parts, hey, consider subscribing across Apple, Spotify, YouTube, of course. Get on YouTube, like and comment on all our videos. Help the algo love us back if you're already a subscriber there. And if you're already a subscriber, please share these episodes, shout us out, tell people about us. I say this ad nauseum this time of year, but that's how it helps get the word out there and help this community continue to grow. We're putting out content when a lot of other podcasts are not, at least not as frequently as we are. And there are very few, maybe 1, 2, 3 podcasts max that are doing these team by team previews as in depth with local experts as we are. If it's 3 others, I'd be absolutely shocked. So please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you had, make sure that we get more subscribers. Discord as always too. The link is in the podcast and YouTube description. Let's talk Houston Rockets with Salman Ali. Salman, how is it going? Welcome back. This is, I don't know how many look aheads you've done. I have a notation down, but you've been on the podcast so many times independent of it. I don't actually have track. I'm pretty sure this is at least like your 4th or 5th year of being on the pod for the look ahead. So thank you for coming back. How the heck are you?
Doing all right. Let's just call it my debut. How about that?
Your debut. Yeah, let's hook it around the debut of Salman Ali on the HardwoodKnocks podcast.
Right.
The Houston Rockets, though, super just, I mean, like, they didn't do much this offseason. They drafted Reed Sheppard. They made that trade where they give the Nets back control over their next 2 picks to get some long-term equity, mostly related to the Phoenix Suns. When you kind of look at that, what do you think it says about the position that they're trying to hold or formulate? Is it just kind of, we want to see what we have, but we also want to be built to strike if like a really big opportunity comes along? Does it infer something else? Where are you at with that?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, before the offseason, I kind of thought they were going to do nothing. Like I said on my podcast, I was like, yeah, this is not going to be much. Like they're going to draft somebody. They're going to re-sign. They're going to pick up these options, these team options, and that's it. They're going to call it a day because they're not really incentivized to do much. Like they still don't have enough data on these young players. They need to collect as much of as they can before they make real decisions. Obviously keep smelling around for opportunities. If something that you can't turn down comes up, then strike. But if something that you have to really think about comes up, you err to the cautious side because you don't want to trade someone away that ends up becoming a 4-time MVP, right? Because these players are so young that it's really hard to determine like if someone's good, like how good are they? If someone's great, like how great, like we're just way too early in this.
And I think part of that is when you look at the flexibility they could have next summer in 2025, a lot of that is going to be predicated on not extending Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun. They could preserve some because they can have a shit ton of cap space. I call it choose your own adventure cap space because there's so many different permutations they could take. That's like sort of the last piece of real offseason business that feels like it could fall for this team would be if they extended either of those guys. Would you expect them to? Would you be surprised if they did? If you had to pick one is going to get an extension, who do you think it would be?
Neither of them are going to get extensions. And it's not a determination on player quality. It's purely the way this organization has operated for decades, right? They keep optionality open at all costs. Look at Daryl Morey in Philly and what they did with Tyrese Maxey. This is the same GM tree, right? Like they're gonna operate the same way. They want to retain the lowest possible cap hold they can. And in particular, when you look at Alperen Sengun, like that cap hold is just it's too juicy not to keep on your books, right? Like Jalen Green, if he gets a bump, like yeah, it'll impact your books a little bit, but it's not really because he was a 2nd overall pick.
Yeah, right? His hold's like close to his max anyway.
Yeah, it's not something that with Jalen, it's more about the long term, right? Like it's like, do you want to give this guy a max extension? Yeah. Do you want to give this? Yeah, a contract period. Yeah, all that. Like, what kind of deal do you want to give Jalen? Sengun, he's gonna get a max. Like, everyone knows it. It's just a matter of who gives it to him. Like, and when I say who gives it to him, I mean, like, is it going to be another team in restricted free agency? Is it going to be the Rockets next summer? Like, that's basically like how it happens. That's where we're at with Alperen Sengun. He's proven that he's that good. It's really, when is Jalen going to prove that he is that good? Right?
Mhm.
Is he going to prove that he's that good? That's what this season's all about. Like, I talked about, I may have been even on this show. I don't believe in third year leaps for players drafted as young as Jalen. I believe in fourth year leaps.
Okay.
I think NBA history has always told us, you got to look at that age 22 season. People who talk about third year leaps, I think it's an outdated term. I think it's probably from the time that guys went to college for 2 years, and then the third year leap was actually the age 22 season. Really, when you're talking about guys going to college for 1 year, or in Jalen's case, the G League, it's that fourth season,
Mhm.
that age 22 season. So I think if we're gonna see a leap, it's gonna happen now. So if it happens, great. Then he'll get that contract. It might even happen in season, right? Because again, there's no benefit to waiting. If the cap hold, we just talked about it, it's not that much of a difference. But if it doesn't happen, then maybe we talked about them waiting for the iron to get hot to strike. That might happen in February. You know?
That's a great point. And that would be the argument because I think there would be a line of thought where, like, if Jalen Green is willing to sign for a number that is substantially less than his cap hold, you could say, well, it might make sense to just re-sign him. But if you're trying to keep yourself, it's just easier to move him if he doesn't sign any extension because of the poison pill provision. So that would be the argument of just like, don't give, even if he was like, if he said 4 for 100, that's a number that you probably at least have to think about. But
Yeah.
I don't think that he would want to take something that low. And you mentioned a leap for him. What does that look like? Is it just him playing the way he does from like mid-February on, starting in October?
Yeah, that it's not even mid-February on, really. It's March. It's March Jalen Green, right?
I was trying to be kind here.
Right. Yeah. So like, if he has a March season, right? Like then yeah, then that's what a leap looks like. It's really a matter of shooting consistency. That's the biggest thing with him. His jump shot is just so erratic. It's very, very streaky. He can't string together 3 or 4 good games, right? Like, it's really like, if he has like a hot shooting month, even in that great shooting month, it's like out of 4 games, he'll have like 3 ridiculous games and 1 dud, right? Like, it's that streaky. So can he be more consistent with that, right? Can he continue with the great progress he made getting to the free throw line into year 4, right? Can he build out his body more? Can that handle become tighter, right? Like that handle is still too loose, right? It got better last year. It's still too loose, right? Can he get better operating in pick and roll, right? Like, that's the biggest thing, right? If he's gonna be a superstar, if he's gonna be an all-star, much less superstar, he's got to be an amazing pick and roll operator. He's just not there yet.
Do you see the potential for him to do that?
Yeah, but again, like, so then the next question is like, okay, so how much is that player worth? And is that player worth building the whole franchise around? Because you look at the guys that you think of in this mode, it's like Devin Booker, it's Bradley Beal, it's Zach LaVine. Like, this is the spectrum you're looking at, right? Like,
Yeah.
like, and so even if you get to the highest end of that spectrum, Devin Booker is like, what, the 10th best player in the NBA, maybe 12th, right? Like that.
Yeah.
That guy's great, right? Like, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to diminish him. He's not good enough to be the best player on a championship team, right? So like, you still have to weigh all that, and it may still end up, if that's the case, it may end up being worth trading him anyways, because then you can get more financial flexibility, because you can't re-sign all 6 of these guys, or I should say 7 now, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I think at this point, you kind of have to pick and choose when you pay your players, which players to pay. And if you can just like push one guy off to the side where you don't have to pay him, right? Okay, then you're down to 6 guys you have to choose between, right? Which is, that's that, in a lot of respects, like, obviously you want all your players to hit, but if one player hits, it almost makes your decisions much easier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they're in a unique situation because both him and Alperen Şengün are on that exact same timeline and like considered big money tickets. But aside from the Alperen Şengün and Jalen Green just futures, what is I dictate too much of how these podcasts go. So what's the biggest storyline that you're looking at, following, tracking as we head into this season?
So I was gonna say Jalen, but I guess if I can't pick Jalen, I want to see Amen. Like Amen is like sneaky. Like I have him tied with Sengun as most intriguing prospect on this team. Right? Like he may have the highest upside in this team alongside Sengun. Like he is just so unique and so multidimensional. And like obviously the weaknesses are there, but because the strengths are so strong, he is a great finisher. He's an uber athlete. He is already very strong defensive player. I could see him, Dan. I know this is crazy. I know this is like a serious NBA podcast. I could see him challenging for all defensive second team next year. That's how good he is.
If he has the playing time under his belt, I don't think that's wild at all, just based off what we've seen from him.
Yeah, he's crazy. I've never seen a rookie. I mean, obviously, I cover the Rockets. My scope is a little bit limited, but like, I've never seen a rookie that good defensively, but particularly a wing.
Yeah,
Like,
I was gonna say Wemby is probably the best defensive rookie I've ever seen since Tim Duncan, at least. And I was too young when he was a rookie. But as a
right.
wing, yeah, I mean, even if you look at some of the
It's like
players that have,
Simmons, right? Like Ben Simmons, like that. That's like the last one I could think
yeah,
of.
yeah, no, it's a good point. So, I mean, I'd be curious. I don't think voters would give it to a sophomore who isn't Wemby, but I do think that he could be on the level of just like he will be in the conversation because he's that dominant defensively and the tools that he has. Like it's the counting stats, it'll be the advanced metrics, and then just like you watch the eye test, and he is dominant on the defensive end.
Right. And so like that's who I want to watch because funny enough, he's the exact same age as these guys, as Jalen and Sengun. Like, and he was drafted last year. He was just an older rookie. That's why it sneaks up on you. But he's kind of in that age 22 season too, right? So if you're gonna see a leap naturally, like you may see one from him too. So I kind of group all those three guys together in terms of like let's see what level can they take it to, right? What's their next logical extension? And obviously everyone's gonna be looking at the jump shot. I think the jump shot just okay. Like this sounds bad. I tend to believe like my gut instinct, put a gun to my head, that just may be broken, right? Like that just may be like one of the like the base. You're starting from such a low baseline that you shouldn't bank developmentally on that becoming a thing, right? I think what I'm more interested in seeing is can he become like his ceiling as a player, is that higher than Alperen Şengün's? And if it is, okay, now I got to make a decision, right? Because I don't think those two can coexist because of the limited jump shot.
So
Right.
yeah, and that's what I mean. Let's get into that because that's been a big topic. And we saw Amen Thompson like kind of hit his sweet spot offensively without Alperen Şengün, and because he's doing a lot of the off ball work. And so in theory, you look at Alperen Thompson, not if he doesn't have the ball as much, like okay, then why can't he fit with Alperen Şengün? You mentioned the jumper stuff, and so that's where it does get super awkward because with Alperen Thompson's development, if you need to find out if he's more important to you than Şengün, don't you need to get to a point where he has more on ball reps? And I know this isn't like, let me be clear. I know the Rockets weren't a heavy pick and roll team, but he's averaging under 3 pick and rolls per 36 minutes last year. That's like, you need to see more. And even just like the drives, those were pretty low per 36 minutes. So how do you, because you have Şengün and also some of these other guys, like, how do you go about are you just going to have to make some tough calls? Or there going to be things that fall by the wayside? Does it really, is some of this like Alperen Şengün might have to adapt, or you just get to a point where you're like really rigidly staggering them? Because I do think if you need to figure out how good Amen is going to be, and like if you also want him to develop, I'm with you on the jumper. Like it'd be nice if he gets it, but it's almost like, well, if he could start hitting more of those floaters, like that we saw some of those from him, if those go in at a higher clip and he's taking them at a higher frequency, that's at least a different level to his offensive game. But he needs the reps to have that. And I would assume you're not going to have that in the core lineups because of Alperen Şengün and some of these other guys. And so can you get to that, like enough of that with the secondary units?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a credit to him that he was as efficient as he was playing that. It wasn't even a secondary. He was playing a tertiary role. He was playing off the ball. He was
It was
playing
like,
Andre Iguodala like
yeah, or
role.
like even Aaron Gordon-esque at points, like kind of floating around the dunker spot area as
Right.
well.
It was and he was still effective, which is like that's why he's so impressive. Right? Like the role he was cast in, you didn't expect anything from him and he was still what the hell? Like what is this? Right?
Right.
Like and like it's not that no one didn't think he was talented. It's that we thought the jumper was going to be such a big thing, right? It was going to be such a like he's a guard who can't shoot, right? So like that's really hard to adapt to in the NBA. But he was still effective. He was still positive as a rookie guard who can't shoot threes. That's really impressive. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how you do it. I'm not gonna lie. I don't have an answer for you because that guard rotation is really I mean, you got Van Vliet, you got Green, you got Whitmore, um,
Reed
and
Sheppard.
you got Sheppard now, and Sheppard's not even going to be able to play, to be honest. He's probably not going to be able to play this first year, and unless guys get hurt. I see him being a G League guy, and that's not a big. That's not really a big deal. Like Whitmore was a G League guy until guys got hurt, right? But that's just the state of play when you look at like how do you are you going to have a 15-man rotation? You can't do that, right?
Right.
So
That is. So, I mean, I would say with Amen specifically to focus on him, like to wrap it up, I wonder if they can just, I feel like not if they can, they can. I think the best way might be, okay, like the Jabari minutes without Sengun where he's your 5. And like that's when Amen needs to be playing most and you get him the on ball reps because you don't have to deal with not occupying the same space, but some of the floor spacing issues. You could surround those two with shooters. I mean, Cam Whitmore would qualify. That would honestly, I was going to float like make sure Reed Sheppard's in those lineups because of his threat level off the ball. But you're talking about whether he would struggle to get minutes. And that, like, by the way, I'm so high on Reed Sheppard. So, like, do you just have any early impressions of his game? I was going to ask you about his role, but it seems like you don't think he's going to play much.
it's not. It has nothing to do with his talent. It's
No,
just
I know that. It's just it's wild to think that the number 3 pick without injury, and also when I do think he brings like an element of what this offense needs, wouldn't be penciled in for like guaranteed minutes. But then you start to look at their depth chart. We've said it on this podcast a zillion times. The Rockets almost have too many guys. It's like a good problem to have, but it's like you run into a minutes crunch there.
Let's count them out. You have the 7, right? You have the 7 draftees. Then you got the guys that they signed: Brooks, Green, Van Vliet. That's 10, right? And then you got I didn't even count Jock Landale and Steven Adams.
Yeah, Steven Adams, Jae'Sean Tate.
Jae'Sean Tate, that's 4 guys. Like it's 14 guys. Like I wasn't kidding when I said you can't play 15 guys, right? Like you have to figure out a way to at least get it down to 12, right? Which means you're going to have to cut 2 guys. And I just tend to believe Reed being the rookie in that crowded guard rotation is one of the obvious ones. The other one's probably Jock Landale, right? Like I just think Jock Landale is going to be a DNP CD most nights.
Yeah, for sure.
And like that's how you get to 12.
Is there like if Jalen struggles out of the gate though, and like you're looking for the element of, because the thing that impressed me most about Reed Sheppard was like his ability to just get by guys and into his pull up from mid range. And that's just like if Jalen is having another couple months where he doesn't look so good, is that, I know you mentioned injuries, but is that in any way like a pathway to Reed Sheppard becoming more of an integral Krog earlier?
That's a pass to Jalen getting traded, right? Like if
Well,
he
that's
has a
like
bad couple months to start the season, like he can't have like let's be clear on how crucial of a season this is for Jalen. If that happens, what you're describing, he's gone. Because we're talking October, November, we're getting close to the trade deadline. And if he has one great month, is that convincing enough to keep him? No. Right? Like like that's how crucial that is for Jalen. So yeah, if he has a bad couple of months, the spot may open up for him at the trade deadline.
I will say putting Sheppard in the G League is intriguing from the sense like he will get on ball reps there.
Yeah.
And so like if you're trying to figure out if he can run your entire offense, that's great information. But I also wonder if it's not that it's a disservice, but like is he so organically lethal away from the ball that you don't need, like I'm sure they could try and focus on doing that in the G League, but like it's Reed Sheppard. You don't want him really off the ball in the G League. I wonder, I don't think that's a disservice. I just wonder if it could delay it at all, like his onset impact. But again, it comes back to not to belabor the same point, but they just have so much, like, you have to play this talent. Like you have to play talent that's on this roster that I could see where it gets tough. And also you're a team that like has semi-immediate aspirations in the sense that you were pretty good last year. And so it makes sense that the rookie would kind of fall by the wayside if your goal is to be a playoff team. And then you could adjust your rotation, not only based off trades, but again, based off your record. If it's like January or February and you're not as good as you expected, maybe you make some different type of rotation decisions there.
Yeah, I went on some show last year. I'm sorry. I'm really bad with names. Like, so I think it was a Rockets. It was a Houston show, Houston sports show last year. And I remember saying, yeah, Cam's not going to play. He's going to be in the G League all year. And the host was kind of like, what? I'm just like, yeah, I mean, count this out with me, guy. Right? Like, let's go through the names. Right. And then like we got to, it's like, yeah, you're kind of right. Like, what about injuries? I'm like, yeah, but what about injuries for anybody? Right? Like that's, you're asking me as a baseline. Yeah, he's not going to play. And that's what happened. You started the season, Cam didn't play. And then guys got hurt, he played, right? And like that's kind of where that's kind of how this works. And we talked a lot about how they didn't do anything this summer, right? If they were going to do something this summer, it would have been a consolidation type trade where you gave a bunch of these guys all together out for a star, right? Because you don't want to trade those picks, right? When you can just trade players and open up minutes for other guys, as well as, consolidate the assets to get a stronger asset in. That's the way you want to do it. Right? You want to trade multiple young players for your whatever star you trade for, right? That's the way you prefer to structure the trade. And that's the way you make the financials work too. Because I mean, not Jalen Green is not going to make a trade work just by himself.
Right.
You're going to need to get a few more guys in there. So that would have been the opportunity to do it. I guess February is another opportunity. We're just gonna have to see. These next 12 months are gonna be so fascinating. The urgency is gone for them a little bit because they trade away these picks in the future, right? So maybe you don't have to do anything. Maybe you can just kind of like let this all marinate. But I kind of think you have to start planning for the future a little bit when you look at the core you want to narrow down, right? Because as much as I would love to keep all 7 of these guys, it's just not practical. Right. It's just not practical.
Where does Jabari Smith Jr. land on that spectrum? Just because I thought he improved basically everywhere last year. I know a lot of people, you focus on the 3-point efficiency, but even the ball handling, the defense, the footwork, the wire-to-wire takes, he was just a lot better. And yet, on a team that's just so crowded, and if you're about to maybe build your entire team around Sengun, we'll have to see what they do with that when it comes time for his next contract. On a team with so many players to play, so many mouths to feed, what does like the next level look like for him in Houston? And also, I think the question I'm actually more intrigued by is, does having Steven Adams, I know he's older coming off that injury, is that going to infringe upon any of like the Jabari at the 5 stuff that we got to see last year?
Probably.
That sucked, but
yeah, it's not great. But I gotta say this, like, Jabari and Sengun, there's no reason that can't work. We've said it a few times now, right? Like not on this specific episode, but on episodes with you. Their games complement each other so well. And yeah, you would like to get more data on Jabari at the 5, right? Because it is a nice spaced out unit, and you can do a lot more on the perimeter with that spaced out units, particularly with Amen Thompson, right?
Yeah.
He gets a lot of space to operate, but that front court, theoretically in a vacuum, should be fine. And I don't think there's as far as Jabari's future on the team, he has a future on the team, is what I'll say. I don't see, he's not in jeopardy, because he's
more so thinking
malleable.
like in terms of his development. Like I'm curious where the opportunity for like a role expansion would come for him when you look at the setup. But yeah, him and Sengun, they complement each other very nicely. And look, last year, Jabari Smith proved that he's like basically a universal fit, which is huge. I just wonder, like, sort of like, where does he go from here? Not in a bad way that I pin it on him, but it's like, what does the next level on this Rockets team look like for Jabari Smith Jr.?
More turnaround jumpers, I guess. Like,
right.
I mean, that's, I don't say that pejoratively. I mean, like, I genuinely mean, like, yeah, that's his bread and butter. Let's see more of it. Let's see how efficient he can get at that. shot, right? Like the LaMarcus Aldridge kind of area of the floor, right? Like that's kind of like that was one of my projections for him, right? Like I kind of thought like that's a nice career path for him if he becomes a star, right? Like that's a kind of nice area to really explore. He can space out the floor, which LaMarcus couldn't until his latter years, right? Like that's something that you could do more with, right? I don't think there's there shouldn't be any reason you can't give him a couple more jumpers per game. He also has to get a little bit more efficient to really demand that, right? Like he did get more efficient last year, right? And that's a credit to him. I agree with you. Like he improved the most year over year out of anybody on the Rockets last year. That's how bad he was his rookie season, right? But also like he was just on a different level confidence wise with the ball in his hands, operating in transition, going end to end sometimes, like shooting the three ball. Obviously, he got the jumper back, he got the confidence back, and like you really saw a different level of swagger with him, which was encouraging. I think you want to see. What did he shoot? Like 35% on threes last year. Like, can we get to like, okay, we were talking about him as one of the best shooting big prospects of all time, right? Like that was the conversation, right? Like I think Sam Vecini at one point said he was one of the best shooting prospects he's ever seen, period, right? Like, which is I don't say that as like that's a ridiculous thing to say. I think that was just the conversation around him. So can he get to like high 30s in 3-point shooting, right? Can he get to 37, 38, 39% from three? Like that's something I'd like to see. Like just like little simple stuff. There's lots of ways you can improve. And there's nothing the structure of the team I don't think should infringe on his development.
I will say the structure of the team almost feels like it fits Cam Whitmore's development to a T. You just look at kind of the shot making, the rim pressure, that was all divine for him last year. I don't really see the end of season assist hunting was kind of fun, but I don't really see that like in his game permanently. And so if you just need him as this perimeter play finisher, this feels like a perfect spot for him. What type of I'm assuming his role is just going to continue to expand, even like within this jumbled pecking order, right?
Yeah, he's such an undeniable force. And I don't
You're also dealing with two bigs in your primary bigs in Jabari, Smith, and Alperen Sengun. They're not getting to the rim a ton. So to have that element from Cam Whitmore seems absolutely massive.
Yeah, he's a man, right? Like he's different from these other rookies, right? Like these other rookies are rookies. He is something else, right? He is the youngest player. I think he might still be the youngest player from this core. I think Reed might be younger than him now, but like he is among the youngest players of this core, and he plays like among the oldest players on this core because of how well built he is, right? And how physical he is getting to the basket, and just how like in terms of like fear, all these other Rockets are like humans, and like he's not, right? Like he's just like very robotic and like this is what I'm gonna do. If I don't make it, whatever. If I make it, cool, right? Like it does not affect his face. Like I watch his face all the time during games. It doesn't move. He doesn't frown. He doesn't laugh. He has like a kind of like the same straight face. It's always even keel. And like whenever I see guys like that, I'm like, all right, like Amen's like that. Amen's actually like that. Amen will have like the craziest dunk you've ever seen, and just like run back on like no face, right? Face the two faceless guys on the team, Amen and Cam. But yeah, just doesn't react and isn't phased by who's in the game, what's going on around him, who he's defending. If LeBron's guarding him, he doesn't care, right? Like he had that crazy game against the Lakers. Or I think did he have 30? I can't remember if he had a lot of threes. He had a lot of threes and he had a lot of dunks. It was a fun game. I'm not worried about Cam. Cam's awesome. Cam is. It's stupid that he's on this team. It's stupid that he's on this team. I'm going to repeat that again. It is very, very dumb that 19 teams passed on him, or 19. He got passed up 19 times rather. Yeah.
Also, it makes me leads into my next question because he, in many ways, to me, feels like a better fit for this roster moving forward than a Jalen Green because he's more of a perimeter play finisher than someone you want to have the ball. So when you look at these guys, Cam Whitmore, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, and Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith, and Jalen Green, like how do you rank those guys in terms of importance to this organization? And even throw like, maybe he's just at the bottom, like Tari Eason in there, who we didn't see much of last season, but it's just like this agent of defensive chaos and like sort of every team wants a Tari Eason on their roster. Like, so how do you sort of, finagle that? Because I think it seems very clearly that Sengun and Thompson, even if there's debate between who belongs at the top, it feels like those two are like the top. And then Sheppard, you're just not at a point where you need to figure out his place in this discussion. So it's kind of these other four, really.
Yeah, so I actually did this exercise for my Substack last year, actually in June, so not that long ago, and I put them in tiers. So in my first tier, I had potential number one guys, and I had two guys there. I had Sengun and I had Thompson, right? So those are the two guys I prioritize the most. In the second tier, I have it labeled headache-free complementary stars. Cam Whitmore and Jabari Smith, like there's not really any thinking involved with those two and development wise, and they're not going to infringe upon anybody. And in that last year, it's not an insult to them. It's not. I have Tari and I have Jalen, right? And I think people are going to see the Jalen thing. And it's like, oh, this guy's like it's not really that I think Jalen's going to be. I just think the Rockets have drafted very, very good, and that there might be 5 All-Stars on this team, right? And I think Tari Eason's just a hedge, like just a hair better than him. But I think I could see the case for Jalen being better, right? But like that's how I would rank it. I would say, Amen and Sengun. I would probably pick between one of those two long term. The complementary guys, Cam and Jabari, and the guys you kind of have to really decide on, like as in who you're going to keep. Or I would probably, if I were to rename that category today, I'd say trade bait category, Tari and Jalen, right?
Can I ask why Tari's not in the complimentary tier? Just because like he might be someone who fits any iteration of the Rockets, and also just I think based off his play style, when you're not dealing with someone who has a ton of ball skills, like paying him isn't going to be as astronomical a cost as Jabari, maybe even as Cam, and definitely not as Jalen Green, Sengun-Amen, those guys.
Well, because I think he kind of overlaps a lot with Jabari.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because I think they're both power forwards, and I think like you really only need one of those guys, and Jabari's 2 years younger, or two. He might even be 3 years younger, but he's quite a bit younger, and so you can push back the payment timeline with Jabari, and I would probably say that Tari is easier to justify trading because he is 2 years older, right? And like he is better than Jabari, and he has more market value, I would say, than Jabari right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, because he's a better player, and while he is 2 years older than Jabari, I don't know if GMs necessarily know that, or not that they don't know that, but like they don't think of it that way, right? Because they were drafted in the same class.
I guess when you look at it through the lens of if there are good teams that would be willing to put up gaudy offers, Tari makes more sense in terms of having the immediate impact, I think, just because Jabari Smith, there's so many different layers to his offensive game that he's more still developing. That's an interesting thought, though, because I think in a vacuum, I'd probably give up more to have Jabari on my team than to have Tari Eason on my team.
Yeah, I would agree with you, which is why I ranked Jabari higher, right? And like I also just think that like what I categorized the third tier was like unrealized star potential, right? Which is Jalen and Tari. I don't know if Tari's going to be a star. I don't know if Jalen's going to be a star, right? And like those are the guys that are easier to trade, and those are the guys who, when you're making these decisions and when you're planning out, like I look at this a lot through Sam Presti's lens, right? Because Presti just this summer, I mean, put aside everything you think about Josh Giddey as a person, he just traded away like a real chip there, right? Giddey could be could end up becoming a star in his own right in Chicago. I know people are down on Giddey right now. I still think he's pretty good. I still think he's going to be a pretty good player in the NBA. I still think he has star potential. I'm not saying he's going to reach that star potential. I still think if you're saying he doesn't have it, we can't talk. Is where I'm at with Giddey, right? Like if you're saying,
I guess we can't talk then.
After 1 year, you're going to dismiss it, like because
this isn't that. Oh, to be fair, it's been 3 years of just the same.
Where were you on him last year, though?
What's that?
Where were you on Giddey before this past season?
I flip-flopped on Giddey. I think the problem is last year feels more telltale than anything because players around him got better. And the fact that he was unable to fit into what should have been an easier role for him, like this is someone who needs the ball. It's very clear. And like he knocked down threes last year, but there's a difference between his 3-point percentage and actual floor spaces. Defenses don't give a fuck. We saw it in the playoffs, and he was playing off the floor in the playoffs. There's no solve for that. And if the solve is put the ball in his hands and build the entire team around him, I think it puts a cap on your ceiling. So no, if you told me,
does it put a cap on your ceiling or does it put a cap on your floor? Because on your ceiling, I don't think it impacts it by much. Because if he needs the ball in his hands, like that's basically saying
if he needs the ball in his hands, you need him to also then be your best scorer in high leverage moments. Otherwise, because there's no value in displacing him from the ball.
Right. But like what? So how old is he? 20?
I think he's 21. I'll double check that.
Yeah, he's okay. 20, 21. Like, have we seen anything to say that he can't eventually become that? Like, is he that much? Is he that different than like? Okay, I don't want to get off topic. I don't.
Look, to use it, Larry Markkinen was in like year 7 or 8 when he blew up into an all-star. So no, I won't rule it out. But
I don't want to get off topic and make this a Giddey discussion. Like I'm talking about like the way Presti made that decision, right? Like he traded away someone that I view, and I suspect the Thunder still view with like at least a little bit of star potential, right? And I think Tari and Jalen both, even if you're down on both those guys, they still have a little bit of star potential, right? Is it crazy at all to think of Houston 12 months from now making a trade like that?
Oh no, I don't. To be clear, I don't think it's. I've received pushback from Rocket fans because when I look at their roster, I've actually looked at Tari Eason and said that might be someone teams could go out and get. And there's been a bunch of Rockets fans that say he's more important to the future than Cam Whitmore is. I think anything is debatable at this point because of how many young players we're dealing with. I really think the only clear tier to me is just like Sengun-Amen, and maybe you don't want those two together long term, but like those might be the directional pole stars. Although I tend to be higher on Reed Sheppard. I view him as someone who belongs in that tier as well. Like he fits.
I didn't have him on this list in June. Yeah, I didn't know he was going to be on the team, and like also I still don't know enough to put him on this to rank him. Right, I'm going to do this list again next June, and I just have to see like how he does 1 year into the NBA, especially what he does in the with volume. I think that's going to be important. But like, I think I can't. Like it's not. I don't want to say it's a bad thing to be in tier 3. Again, I still think these guys.
Oh, I don't have a problem with your actual rankings or what you're saying, but he just feels more like, I guess I don't view him as a potential star, and I don't mean that in this, pejorative way. I just view him as like he tops out as a superstar role player, and that player fits anywhere. And I don't know if that player ever commands the amount of money some of these other guys that we've discussed will. And
you can't see him becoming like Jeremy Grant.
What's that?
You can't see him becoming like Jeremy Grant.
No, I mean, do you see the level of on-ball creation from him that Jeremy Grant has showed in Detroit and Portland? I don't know that I've seen.
Well, early in his career, right? We didn't see that with Jeremy, right? Like that's the thing. Like Jeremy kind of surprised a lot of us when he signed that contract with Detroit. It's like, what the hell? What? Go ahead.
That first contract, though, like he was still. It took him a while to become super expensive, is my point. And so, like Tari Eason, if he's following the Jeremy Grant like sort of arc, you can get another contract out of him where he's nowhere near the max. And so that was the only thing I was disagreeing with, was that I don't view him as just like he could be expendable because of the makeup of your roster, but I just view him as like, well, he might be worth keeping around anyway because he's not going to cost you. But like Jalen Green, because of the value that just seems like it's assigned to scorers. I mean, maybe this will be proven wrong depending on how this season goes. he's going to cost more. Amen Thompson's going to cost more. Reed Sheppard's going to cost more. Alperen Sengun's going to cost more. And Jabari, to me, should cost more. Tari Eason, I look at as like, if you told me when it becomes extension time or deal time for him that he ends up signing for like between 18 and 20, something like Dylan Brooks money, basically, that wouldn't shock me. And that's money that you can keep around in addition to building out the rest of your like quote unquote top of the roster with your stars.
Yeah, and like you don't have to trade both these guys, right? I just think they're both in the trade bait category, right?
I think that's perfectly fair to say.
Yeah.
I honestly, are you sure that like Alperen Sengun's not in the trade bait category?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to be positive there.
I mean, like it's not that I don't think the Rockets will ever trade him. It's just that I think if you're trading him, it's probably more of an indication of what you're seeing from Amen Thompson.
But I'm saying, is that like outside the realm of possibility that Amen Thompson is such a monster this year?
Not at all, not at all. But I guess when I say trade bait, it's more like when I use that framing, it's more of a pejorative, and that's why I don't want to use it with.
That's fair. So it's like, I guess I have trouble spotting. Like, if you ask me to rank Rockets untouchables, I feel like I would almost have Amen Thompson and Reed Sheppard ahead of Alperen Sengun, and that's probably bonkers. I don't mean it as an indictment on Sengun's game necessarily, but I look at what those two dudes could do, and like the fact that Alperen Sengun's already coming up on like that big money deal. And it just makes me wonder if this is not an official ranking. It's just amusing. And I can already like the YouTube and Twitter comments are going to be a disaster because I said that, but it's a safe space. I'm saying it. So
it's okay. I said a lot of crazy stuff at the beginning of this show. I mean, it's fine. Like I don't think what you're saying is crazy. You're talking more about payment timelines, right? And like that makes sense to me. But if I still kind of pair them together because of the age. And because, like, yeah, as you said, you use that framing, the tent pole. Yeah, they both are directional tent poles. And so,
when's the last time we've seen like look? And I want to make it clear if anyone took that as an insult to Sengun, he is a directional tent pole. When's the last time though it's seen? And maybe we haven't seen enough of it. Maybe it still works. But where a team has two of those guys in him and Amen Thompson, and they don't really seem like they could fit together. I think the closest, like you could say,
Embiid and Simmons. Like when Simmons was at his peak. Yeah, when Simmons was at his peak.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, that's I've thought about this a lot. That's why I was quick to mine. I other than that, you're right. It's hard. I mean, I guess you can say Westbrook and Harden in OKC. But
yeah, Harden was such a different player in OKC that with the benefit of hindsight, it's James Harden never becomes James Harden if he stays in OKC. That much is very clear, probably because of Westbrook.
Yeah. Yeah. They're few in name though. It's very hard. Like teams of, I guess NBA history's gotten lucky in that respect where like two non-complementary talents don't get drafted in the same team that often. Or maybe it's the case that just like Presti and Hinkie are just kind of, they come from that ruthless aggression draft mentality where like they don't care about fit when they're drafting, right? And same thing with the Rockets. Take the best player available.
And by the way, you kind of alluded to this with the Presti way, is like you make decisions on these players. If you're not sure whether you want to pay them, you trade them. You don't roll the dice and let the market set. Like that's what Presti has done time and again, basically. It's like if he's not paying these dudes, they're gone. And so that's why with Jalen Green and less so with Alperen, like that's why these seasons are interesting when they don't get extensions, because if you're not sure if you want to pay them and you think that they might try and mirror the way that the Thunder have handled things, you're making all of your decisions, whatever they are, before like these actual contracts are signed. And yes, for the cap space purposes, Alperen Sengun, the cap hold is so low, like you keep him, you let him ride it out. We just saw the Sixers were able to come to the mutual understanding with Tyrese Maxey when they didn't extend him. So as long as you have buy-in from him, there's no risk there. But that's just like kind of another thing to monitor, is that this doesn't, like, I don't think that you want to, unless you know that you don't want to let this necessarily leak into restricted free agency without having a stance. And I think that impacts Jalen Green way more than it does Alperen Sengun.
Yeah, I think it's tough to know, right? I'm at the place where like I know what I'm doing with Sengun. It's just a matter of how I'm doing it, right? That's where I'm at. I don't know where the Rockets are, and I say I don't know where the Rockets are because of their history with Sengun, right? That the
hashtag Brook Lopez, yeah,
right, yeah. It's not just the Lopez thing though, right? It's there's little things here and there,
Well, you
right?
said it the last time we talked, and that might be the biggest. It's not the word's not indictment, but like the biggest harbinger of their view is that you said Alperen Sengun didn't do a ton differently last year. It was a matter of opportunity, not improvement for him.
Yeah,
And it took
yeah,
him so long to get the opportunity to become what he did.
yeah. And I got a lot of heat for that, by the way, because basically said like, hey, I don't really think he should be this most improved player conversation, but I'm glad that he's getting it. Like, don't get me wrong. As a fan of the team, like, I'm glad that he was talked about there. I don't really think he deserves to be there. Not as in like he didn't improve, but most improved, right? Like, I don't think I think that's a stretch. I think what happened is his role got boosted.
Sometimes though, MIP is an analog for this dude's role got bigger. So
yeah. I mean, that's true, right? CJ McCollum's like the classic one, right? Coming off the bench, putting up the same per 36, and then starts, and then he gets the most improved, right? Like that's kind of like a classic most improved player. And Maxi this year, right? Was Maxi the guy who won it?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Max. We knew Maxi was this, right? Like a lot of it, right?
This entire discussion is just ridiculous because it's an embarrassment of riches. But like these are all good. This is a good debate that we're having because it's like there are these like 6 to 7 guys on this roster that just seem so promising. But I want to get to like a more wholesale topic with this team.
Sure.
Especially if you don't think that Reed Sheppard is going to play a big role. What is the path to this team's improvement on the offensive end? They finished 20th in points per possession last year, and you have talented offensive players. Is it just okay? Well, Jalen Green is better for longer, or Cam Whitmore's role is bigger for longer. You have Alperen Sengun. You bank on him getting better, just continued improvement from Jabari. My whole thing with them is I think about too many things through the lens of Amen Thompson. Don't ask me why, but it's like the floor needs to be as open as possible. And I still think, especially if Reed Sheppard's not going to be a huge part of the everyday rotation, that is something they could still theoretically struggle with.
Yeah, I think that's you're not wrong in worrying about the floor spacing long term, right? Like that's why I have those guys. Like you have to pick one, right? Like you can't have two of these non-shooters on the team, and I think that's you nailed it. That's where the improvement comes from. Player development. Player development, player development, player development. That's what next. This is the last fun year you get to have as a Rockets fan. Next year's where the pressure comes in, right? That next year is like where like expectations come in. This is the year where like you can have another. Hey, like look at these scrappy Rockets, right? Like battling for a play-in spot, right? This is the last year we can do that, and then next year is like where you got to start making really hard decisions. And I think it would be easier to make those hard decisions if players make it easy on you, right? If Jalen makes it easy on you, um, these conversations, these questions we have about their offense get answered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the floor spacing, a lot of that is just, let's just be frank, it's because you can't rely on Jalen Green as a 3-point shooter yet, right? And the same thing you could say that about Jabari, because Jabari's first season as a good 3-point shooter was last year, right? And so you're just going to have to get another year of improved offensive play from these guys. But I have no problem, gritting my teeth through a kind of an ugly offensive season if we get real significant data again next year.
And how much do you buy into them being able to match their defensive performance last year, where I think they were 7th in points allowed per possession. They probably got a little bit lucky on opponent 3-point shooting, but they're really good at contesting those shots and limiting wide open opportunities. Their perimeter ranks are filthy when it comes to what they're able to do defensively. A lot of that's Amen Thompson, but they also have Dillon Brooks, a healthy Tari Eason, if Jae'Sean Tate squeaks into the fold. And I do feel like they're probably still weakest on the interior, but like Alperen Sengun, I thought one area he improved. If you looked at his defensive positioning, it was better. I think Jabari Smith Jr. is getting better as a primary rim protector. And so I think I still am a pretty big believer in to be clear, I did not predict they were going to be a good defensive team last year. So Ime Udoka probably deserves a ton of credit as well. And I don't know if they'll be in the top 7 again, but this is a team that when I look at it and the things it's capable of doing, and then scaling forward to be like, well, if Amen Thompson is just going to be healthy the entire year, I feel like I would expect them to, unless they're going to end up leaning on Reed Sheppard a ton. We're going to keep circling back to him. But unless something like that happens, I feel like I almost expect them to be one of the 10 best defenses in the league again.
This will be the third straight season where I will predict them to have the third, like a top 10 defense in the NBA again. Because And that's really an indictment of Steven Silas. I think it's I know he's gone. I know it's a little cruel to keep burying him even though he's gone, but he should have been able to squeeze out a top 10 defense out of this core that last season in Houston. Like I'm serious. The
Really?
piece, yes, the pieces were there.
Okay.
You had Jae'Sean Tate. You had I'm sorry, I'm forgetting. Oh, you had Jabari Smith. You had
Sorry,
Tari
Easton.
Easton.
Yeah.
You had like a lot of these guys that made up their top defense. We're already there, right? Maybe top 10 is a little harsh, but like a top 15, you're telling me you couldn't scrape that out? Like these guys were already tremendous physical talents, right? Like physically, they were ready. They just need direction, right? And I thought, okay, Steven Silas, this is a guy who's supposed to come from the I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name in Charlotte, the head coach.
Paul Silas?
Steve Clifford.
Steve.
He's supposed to come from the Steve Clifford coaching tree, right? Like these guys are supposed to be able to lead good defenses, at least have good defensive principles. And they never had that. They threw out the weirdest lineups possible defensively. And they left all the blame on one dude. And it's like maybe you're using the dude wrong, right? Maybe you're not putting more blame on some of these perimeter guys who are horrendous defensively, right? And I think going into next year, yeah, I expect them to be a top 10 again. Like I may, where they land in the top 10 is kind of irrelevant. What matters is they're in the top 10 again. You know, if they were a title team, yeah, it's relevant, but like they're not, right? So like I think they're going to be a top 10 defense again. They have all the pieces to be, even if Reed Sheppard plays a lot of minutes. I think I want to see another step up from both Sengun and Green defensively. I think those two will really dictate. A lot of questions will get answered if they take steps up defensively, like in terms of like what direction you want to go with the core, right? It's not just Jalen's offensive game, right? That's probably the biggest element of it. The second is also like, can he be like a really stellar complementary player?
Yeah.
If that's possible, then like throw out everything I said about having to trade him in February if he's not a star, right? If he can be a stellar complementary talent, then you can you have more optionality. But I don't see that, which is why I said what I said at the beginning of the show.
The other thing that I would look at from Alperen, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like if they could get Alperen Sengun to the point where like if he's a legitimate pick and pop threat from beyond the arc, that might be a pathway to him coexisting with Amen if defenses ever need to like kind of respect him popping off a screen.
Yeah, I mean, he might be a better shooter than Amen, and it's not saying a lot, right? It's just his mid-range jumper is very, very reliable. So don't get me wrong, but like the 3-point jumper is just like the confidence is just not there.
Wasn't
right?
even that enough then to like then run inverted pick and rolls with Amen Thompson as the screener? Or am I just like trying too hard to shoehorn these two players together?
Maybe. No, maybe you can make like you can make these guys work offensively. They're very, very smart, right? Like even Simmons and Embiid, they made it work, right? It was clunky, but they made it work, and that like you're gonna have some of that in Houston, right? Like Şengün's uber smart, Amen is uber smart. They'll make it work. They're gonna be fine, but optimization is really where the problems run into. Like when you're trying to get to peak Rockets,
Right.
like that's where the problem. So like yeah, in these early years, maybe you can get there. If Amen develops a jump shot, watch out. Right? If Amen develops a jump shot, I don't think he's going to get there, which is why I'm not like I think you got to pick one, but if he develops a jump shot and you can keep both these guys, that means you got 2 tent poles, man. Right? Like that's something you rarely see in the NBA. Right? You're talking about potential 2 number 1 guys on one team. I don't think that's what you have right now. But if you do have that, I mean, that's the ceiling, right? Like that's the ceiling for the Rockets long term.
I guess, is there a reason in particular you're already out on Amen's jump shot? I know it doesn't look pretty, and he obviously did not shoot very well from three, but like the release is quick enough to where like the lack of hesitation at point, to me, it's at least quick enough to the lack of maybe the motion starts too low and that if teams actually respect him, it makes him easy to be stripped or whatever. But I came away just not as discouraged as you from last season. You watched them more though, obviously. So I'm deferring to you, but I'm just curious as to what it is that makes you doubt it specific, or is it just a matter of we so rarely see these players come in with jumpers that are as massive works in progress and then reach a level to where they are like if the outcome is becoming, I don't even know what's a good, like if he becomes Josh Giddey as a set spot up shooter, that's not okay. That's good, but that's not going to necessarily be a course altering outcome because defenses will still defend him the same way.
Yeah, like Rondo's another one where it was like that, right? Like Rondo became a catch and shoot, like a decent catch and shoot guy, but the
Even
defense
like Lou Dort really gets him up there now. Like defenses are kind of like whatever. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of it's that, but a lot of it's also like just the like it's two motions, right? I'm watching his hips and it's like okay, he starts and then he it's not fluid. Right. It's a very robotic. And I was watching drills with him on Twitter, just like I think a couple of days ago. And I'm not sure if this is part of the drill, but it literally is like right, if people listening to the audio, you can't tell what I'm doing. It's like literally he's lifting himself up, and in the first motion, in the second motion, he's shooting. That's not shooting, right? It's just that's like too much of a hitch. And I think if that's part of the drill, it's very possible that is, by the way. Like shooting, there's a lot of different shooting drills you can do where like you break down the motions like that, and it's just easier to just start in that baseline and then you make it one motion. So maybe that's what he was doing in that drill. But like if it's not right, and I watched him last year, and I didn't like the form, right? I was just like, this is not. I watched him with the Ignite. I'm like, this is going to be this might be a problem for the rest of his career, right? Like, we're just going to have to see. The Rockets have a very, very talented shooting coach that Ime brought over from the Celtics, right? So there's the possibility that really helps. I don't know. It's really predicting shooting development is the hardest thing to predict in the NBA, right? Especially if you're not in there every day.
So, are you ready to enter at long last the cookie cutter portion of the podcast?
I'm that's my baseline, Dan.
So, what is when you look at this roster? Is there anything that flies under the radar about it, whether it's a strength or concern that you just don't think is receiving enough attention right now?
A strength or a concern? I guess the asset chest, right? Like, and this is not the roster per se, but it's the team. Like, their war chest is kind of insane, and they built it back up again, right? Like, but by pushing the timeline of these picks, they got more picks from Phoenix, right? I loved that trade. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it at the time. I loved it. I still love it now. I think people were looking at that trade as like, I don't know why Woj was tweeting about Kevin Durant. I think that influenced the way people thought about that trade. And I think he was just speculating. I really do think he was just speculating. And because the next tweet he got, he backtracked. And then on TV, he backtracked again when he was asked about it.
I can't imagine Woj publicly speculate. The Devin Booker, by the way, is the name that caught my attention when he was tweeting about Devin Booker.
That's real.
Yeah, because it almost felt like was Kevin Durant used this cover to be like, oh, I'm just not going to mention Booker because Woj doesn't. He used to, but he won't do that anymore. Like he is too ingrained into like having to maintain these relationships that I don't think he says. Maybe he didn't realize, like maybe he didn't mean to say it, but like it was pretty, like it wasn't an accidental tweet. So
no, I mean, like, I don't want to cut you off, but like, this is what I think happened. The Rockets sniffed around because they always sniff around, right? They sniffed around with Kevin Durant. They sniffed around. They've had interest in Kevin Durant. They tried to sign him in 2017 when Harden was.
And also, not to interrupt you, but like Stone comes from the Daryl Morey front office school of we're just going to throw shit, like call every team about every single player that we want.
Annoy everybody, right? Yeah, like piss everybody off. Call about. We're gonna call you about Giannis, right? Like that's just what they do, right? Like they're gonna do that because it doesn't hurt you, right? Like you may say, "Oh, you're annoying the guy." Who cares if he's annoyed? If he wants to make a trade with you that benefits his team, he's still going to make a trade with you that benefits his team, right? Otherwise, he's terrible at his job, right? But I think they sniffed around this summer, and then he tried connecting the dots himself. I think that was dot connecting.
Okay.
And then because immediately the tweet that followed was like, "Oh, they may not be." I don't remember the tweet exactly, but it was like pretty severe backtracking. And then he was asked about it on SportsCenter, like that night. He dodged the question. I think he got a text from the Rockets, like, "Hey, that's not what we're doing, pal." Like no, right? Like because it makes no sense either. Like logically, let's take my speculation that he was speculating aside, right? Logically, does it make any sense that they were going after that? This trade was about Kevin Durant? No, right?
No,
Maybe
he's entering his age 36 season. That trade was not about Kevin Durant.
right. Like I think this really was just about the assets that they got. I mean, like what happened was, New York saw an opportunity to go get Mikal Bridges. Brooklyn's like, we're not trading Mikal Bridges while we don't have our own draft picks. And they called Houston, and Houston offered them this trade before, right? Like, hey, we at the trade deadline, they threw this trade like, hey, we like those Phoenix picks that you have. We'll take those off your hands if you want your picks back. So at the time, the Nets didn't find it appetizing. But once they got a deal from Mikal Bridges that they really liked, they're like, okay, let's go. We're going to take you up on that offer so we can execute this trade. That's exactly what happened.
Right. I want to make it clear. I probably would have made the trade too if I'm Houston, because to me, it is a gamble, and a gamble I would have made, but it's a gamble in the sense that I do think that they got to a point with the Mikal Bridges return, they would have made that trade anyway with New York. And so you can look at it as, if you're Houston and you are plotting something big, huge, massive, which I don't know if they're plotting it, but they're clearly like, they're stockpiling shit for it if the opportunity arises. The imminency of draft picks matters, because most front offices do not have the job security to say, if it's this trade deadline, if it's next summer, I'm placing a ton of value on a 2029 first round pick or beyond, just because the job security isn't there. With that being said, you did get so much stuff where it's like you basically acquired the rights to 3 Phoenix Suns picks when you look at the way the swaps are going to play out.
And Stone got an extension. Right.
Right. And I'm saying the Rockets might be and also they have enough talent to where it's, well, we're still trying to figure things out. These Nets picks have a drive the car off the lot, like, because they're going to convey within the next couple of years. And by the way, they still did keep the 2027 like control. So like, that's still interesting as well. Yeah. But I do think, and again, I would have made the trade. I want to make that clear, but I do think people are kind of underselling that, oh, Brooklyn would have been so good. Like, people are going to look at it as, oh, did Houston just give away the 3rd pick or whatever the Nets get? And maybe it's not that extreme, but there is a higher possibility that the Nets would have conveyed a top 5 pick to Houston during one of those, because I really do believe that they either, one, just wouldn't have been good, because there was no trade out there for them to get immediately better to the point where they would have just nuked the value of those picks that Houston had. And 2, I think they got to a point where the Knicks gave them so much stuff. Had Houston just said no, the Mikal Bridges trade gets done. Anyway, again,
I disagree.
That's fine. That's fair.
I don't think a world in which the Nets trade Mikal Bridges and the Rockets still own these picks was ever on the table. The reason I say that is, I mean, it's pretty clear if that happens. I mean, if you're an owner, you should look at it objectively, right? You shouldn't do what I'm about to say, right? But doesn't it feel like Sean Marks is on the tail to lose his job if he gives up? If this franchise that just did this 10 years ago gives up another top 3, gives up 2 back-to-back top 5 picks to an organization when they're in the tank, like, again, if they do that again, doesn't that feel like something that could lose Sean Marks' job, right? Like, I don't think it should. To be clear, because you're right, that is a lot of value. You should look at it as a sunk cost, but
my whole thing is that if Sean Marks' job really was in jeopardy, you don't have the agency to do what he just did, which is start a rebuild. by getting your picks back from Houston.
It's easier when you get your picks back, though.
It's easier to sell, but if his job was really like, he clearly has the latitude to operate. And I think it's also universally understood that the organization itself made a misstep when they accepted the whole star thing. And so the fact that also Sean Marks has experience rebuilding without his own picks, because he did that when he first came to Brooklyn, I think that probably would have given him even more agency over. Again, we're splitting hairs over whether.
Yeah,
well, I don't think the Rockets.
I say that to say, like, I mean, like, yeah, I'll get us back on track. Like, I loved that trade, right? Like,
which is, I did too. I thought it was a
Yeah.
smart gamble, and it kicked the can in a way of one of these picks. Let's use the 2025 one as an example. That's going to be a player next summer. That player is inherently less valuable because it's an actual player than this Phoenix selection in 2027 could be anything.
Yeah, well, and also, like, let's take your frame to be true. Let's say they do accept that Nets trade and trade away Mikal Bridges, and Houston decides to turn around and, okay, we know that you don't have Mikal Bridges. We're still going to do this trade anyways with you after the fact that you just traded away Mikal Bridges, and we know that this Nets pick is going to be extremely valuable. Let's say they did that, right? Which I don't think, like, again, I don't think that world was possible, but let's just say it was. Okay, so you're giving up a top 5 pick next year, in all likelihood, because that's how bad Brooklyn's going to be this year.
Yeah.
And the next year possibly again, right? What are you going to do with 2 more top 5 picks? Like, how are you going to optimize those guys?
I mean, if one of them's Cooper Flag, you figure it out, obviously. But
maybe, right? But you don't know that, and it's a 13% chance that it is Cooper Flag at best, right? And also, you have no breathing room to develop any of these talents.
Right.
And you kicking the can down the road, and you're getting assets back with the Phoenix trade.
I guess my read on it was they made this trade because of how tied it is to one team with a very specific player in mind, or they're gaming it. So Devin Booker being the one, in which case it would shock me if Jalen Green is on this team past the trade deadline. Not that they're going to get Devin Booker, but if that's like the apple of, and which is fair just because Devin Booker's in his prime, but like KD's not, even though he's still really good and he's going to be a free agent soon. Bradley Beal, still good, not in his prime. Or it's just like they wanted distant first for what you said, because one, it's harder to groom talents that are coming in, but two, those picks are more valuable if you're really playing the long game here. Not 2025, not 2026, but like we're kind of waiting on like Giannis becoming available in Milwaukee. And so that's why I think it's smart, but it does, I guess where I think Woj was onto something, and I don't think it was Kevin Durant. I 100% agree with you there. They made this trade to me where there feels like maybe there's a list of up to 4 players, but like this trade was made with no more than 3 or 4 players in mind. That was just my read on it, because I really do believe that the Nets would have made the Mikal Bridges trade anyway, in which case, if you're Houston, you deal with the problem of having another top 5 pick when you have it. Like, that's a great problem to have.
I'll say this. I do agree that the Nets should have made the Mikal Bridges trade anyways, right? Like, I do think they should have been viewing this as a sunk cost. Their verbiage, I mean, what they were saying to the media seems to indicate that they were worried about the optics of this. Right, because they were talking about keeping Mikal Bridges and looking for the star that complements him. What the hell are you talking about him?
The Donovan Mitchell extension talks feel like it pushed the Nets over the edge, because like that was kind of the guy where it's like, well, he might just want to go to New York and he doesn't care if it's not the Knicks.
Right,
like,
but what is that getting you? Like Mikal Bridges and Donovan. Like, okay, I get like.
That's also my point here is where was, if that's how you feel about Donovan Mitchell, Mikal Bridges, how do you feel about a team that's just built around Mikal Bridges then?
Yeah, I mean, so it was just weird. It was just weird with what they were saying. But I also do think part of it may have been leverage, right? Leveraging that, like, hey, we're comfortable standing pat, even though a lot of people may call bullshit, right? Like, yo, you're really gonna build around have fun, pal, right? But the Knicks clearly didn't feel that way. So I don't know. It's tough to know. It's tough to know, and chances are we'll never know, because we can't interview. Like, they're not going to be honest about this. Brooklyn's never going to be honest about the idea about, oh, they'll probably say what you're saying, which is like, we would have made this trade anyways, right? Because it makes them look good, right?
I guess my overarching question to you, though, is, like, do you believe that the trade that this is Houston's perspective, they made this move with specific players in mind, or that they made this move to just keep themselves flexible / like flush more distant into the future because they're trying to not delay making that call, but just again, it's more about flexibility because those picks were more imminently going to convey, which in their case, as you outlined, I don't want to use the word problematic, but it would have been more of a logistical issue.
I would say more so the latter, but
Okay.
Devin Booker is an ancillary benefit. Like the Rockets knew, right? They're not naive, right? They're not a dumb organization. They're not they it was a side benefit for them. It's like, okay, like we also have this over them, right? And now we hold this over another franchise.
Well, and you just saw how much a franchise will give up to get back its own picks with Brooklyn. I will say, to transition back into like other stuff, I do hate and I love transactions. People who say that transactions are stupid, I think that they're lame. I think everyone can root for the game how they want to, but it does kind of, I don't necessarily like viewing the Rockets through that lens. They're just so fucking talented as currently constructed, but it's also a reality of what we've circled back to 9 times over on this podcast is just, you have so many guys that you know you're not going to pay. And it's not even a matter of paying them, by the way. It's, you've used this word a few times. How do you optimize all of these guys together? And the answer is you probably can't.
Right. And this trade, like, I know we want to focus on like enjoying the Rockets, but this trade in a lot of ways allows us to enjoy the Rockets, right? Because you're not getting more players coming in through the draft, right?
It's a really good point.
Yeah. And like, I think this kind of gives like I use this word a lot in my write-up for this, right? Breathing room, this phrase, right? Breathing room. That's what this trade was about. Breathing room. Let this roster breathe. Mm-hmm. I think that's why they didn't do anything this summer. They want this roster to breathe. And that data, that whatever comes from this, right? That will inform what they do next with the Phoenix picks, with the players they have on roster. But I think if you're going to ask me to take it back to your question, the under discussed topic with this Rockets team is the bounty of assets that they have. When you combine the players with the picks, I put them up against anybody aside from Oklahoma City. I think Oklahoma City probably has them beat, right? But
oh yeah,
I mean, other than that, even Utah, I think they have a case because Utah might have more picks, but
those teams are good, and they're like Cleveland's built to sustain. Even Minnesota and so young. And by the way, what you mentioned though is interesting with the young players. It does get to a point where like, and that's why I would almost bet on a like kind of a major move coming within like the next season and a half. Those guys become inherently less valuable as they get closer to their next contracts. And like now we're entering the phase of, okay, it's Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green now. Next year it's Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr. And then Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore right after him. And so like this stuff is going to happen. Like it's happening now. Like you're rendering like really important wholesale directional verdicts, like beginning right now because of just the stage of the careers that these players are entering.
If the Rockets didn't get, if they kept the Brooklyn pick and they didn't get, I'm sorry, what's his name? I'm forgetting his name.
Cooper Flag.
If they kept the pick and they didn't get, I'd feel kind of gross. Like you know when you had like a heavy meal, right? And like someone brings like a plate of cheesecake over, it's like I can't. Like it's too much.
I'll never say no to cheesecake, but
it's too much, right? Like I'm stuffed. I don't know what to do with this food.
And to your point, I will never frame it that way entirely, where if the Nets end up getting Cooper Flag because they get the number 1 pick, that outcome was made far more likely because they own their own pick. I want to make that absolutely clear. I don't view it as the Rockets punted on an opportunity to get Cooper Flag. Honestly, this is how I view it, that the Rockets gave up a top 5 pick in 2025 as part of that deal. That's honestly how I'm viewing it. I think and again, I would have made the trade. I want to make that clear. But to me, it's like, it can't just be framed as, oh, the Nets would have been a 30-something win team if the Rockets weren't willing to make this deal. I don't buy it. Even if they had Mikal Bridges, there's a chance that they just suck. Like there are a lot better teams. Like if Mikal Bridges, they weren't good last year. What was the pathway as currently constructed to them getting better this year? They didn't really have one. So that's all I'm saying on that.
Yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is Sean Marks is never going to tell us. There's no point arguing it anymore, right? Like he's never going to tell us.
I feel like we're not even really arguing.
No, we're not. We kind of are because we're talking about like whether or not this trade would have happened, right? Had their picks getting back, and like really, we're not going to know, right? No. Because
maybe when Marks gets fired, there'll be like a tell-all or something.
Perhaps, right? And like really, like, we don't know what that ownership is thinking, and even if we knew what that ownership was thinking, who knows if that changes on a dime when they see the pure volume of draft capital coming in, right? Like, and like owners, I know they pretend like they don't read Twitter. They read Twitter. If they see all the crap that we say about, like, they got all this from Mikal Bridges, like everything we were saying that night, I'm telling you that stuff influences ownership. So maybe even if, like, in his head he's like, you're really gonna have us at the bottom and we're gonna give up another top 5 pick again. After you read all that stuff, it's okay. Maybe that gives you more reassurance in the plan, right? I don't know. We're never gonna know.
Let me ask you this: an encore question. At full strength, what does the top 10 rotation look like for this team?
Sengun, Whitmore, Thompson, Van Vliet, Green, Tate.
Oh, Tate's a guaranteed, you think? Wow.
I mean, I can't see him on the outskirts of the main rotation because why do you have him, right? Like he's on his last year, and you want to maximize his value, and you can't play him in the G League, right? So I'd say Tate's in there. I'd say, did I say Jabari?
So it might be better to do it this way. So I have as their starters are going to be Van Vliet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari, and Sengun.
Yeah.
And then I have Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, and Steven Adams as my locks. So that would be 9. I had Reed Sheppard as a lock too. That's how I rounded up my 10. But clearly we're not on the same page there. And I have to default to you because you know this team so much better than I do.
I'd say Tate. I would say Tate's a lock too.
So Tate over Sheppard or Tate over Adams at that point?
Sheppard. Adams, yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to play him, and they really seem to hell bent on getting a backup center. So yeah, he's a lock too. That's a good 10 for a lock. But yeah, I mean, and then I'd say they're probably gonna play more like 12 guys, right? So I'd say the other two, well, who you're getting is who do we leave out?
You left out Sheppard.
Right, he's out.
There's Jock Landale's there.
He's out.
Yeah, you also have on this team. No, I think Jeff Green is still on this team.
He might.
AJ Griffin, by the way, Aaron Holiday floating around. There's so many fucking guys, man.
AJ Griffin's not playing. Aaron Holiday.
I still like him though, but
yeah, Aaron Holiday might play. I mean, like, it could be, some of this could be night to night too. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I was forcing you to choose the top 10. So
yeah,
you think Reed Sheppard is going to be a bust, and that's fine. Aggregate. Just kidding.
And what's unfortunate is, like, I think he's very, very talented. I just don't see a pathway to playing time his first year. And like, if that doesn't happen, it doesn't bother me because, like, I mean, let's just say high end outcome. Like, wasn't Steve Nash coming off the bench his first year in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
And New Jersey, excuse me. Was it New Jersey? No, you got drafted.
Nash was in Dallas his first year.
Yes, you're right. Man, he bounced around. Okay, yeah. Yeah, he was in Dallas, right? Wasn't he coming off the bench? If I'm not,
look, I'm old. I'm not that old to know.
Whatever the case. Yeah, whatever the case.
He was. Again, he was in Phoenix. I missed that. His first 2 years were in Phoenix. Then it's Dallas, back to Phoenix. He came off the bench his first 2 seasons. Correct.
Yeah. Like, so, like, high end outcome, right? Like I'm not saying that's his high end outcome, but like, it's just a player that comes to mind when I think of Reed. Like, you can still reach it if you don't have a big role your first couple years in the NBA.
It would not shock me if it gets to the point where like denying him minutes becomes impossible. I'm super high on Reed Sheppard. I think it depends on how well you think he's going to immediately translate.
But by the way, I'm going to be completely upfront about this because I criticize other people for doing it. I thought of Steve Nash because I was thinking of a white guy. Right, like, I'm going to be completely upfront. I just want to be upfront because I make fun of people for making the comparisons. First player to come to mind was Steve Nash for me because Reed Sheppard is white. That's the only reason I named it. I'm going to be upfront. I believe in honesty here. Yeah,
that's why whenever people ask me for my Modest Buzelis comp, I put my pinky up and say Pascal Siakam because that's the first name that came to me for him. But
can I beat you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chandler Parsons.
That's a pinkies up comparison. This question's actually, I find it not a brain dead exercise, but like some teams it's not as interesting. For this team, it's kind of interesting. What becomes their most used crunch time lineup? I know it's matchup dependent. I'm forcing you to say what's going to become there. Is it just their starting five, or is there the potential to tinker to get Amen Thompson in there specifically? Is the name that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, maybe you swap out Dylan Brooks for Amen. That could be it. I just tend to believe it is the starting five. Maybe,
Which is fair.
I mean, or this is mean. I mean, if you're not going to swap out Brooks, maybe you swap out Jalen, and you put in.
That's not mean if he's not having like the year that you need him to.
Right. I mean, like maybe you put in Whitmore because he's having a better game or something, right? Or you can't really go small because you need Sengun to be in the game. I think he needs to be in the closing five. So that eliminates the Jabari at 5 lineups. But maybe you put in, maybe you swap out Brooks for like Tari. Maybe you swap out Smith for like Tari, right? Like there are ways you can go. I mean, this team is so deep, right? And like it's so deep. The reason they're not a contender is really their top end talent isn't contender worthy. But if you swapped out their top end talent, like swap out Fred VanVleet for like Shea Gilgeous, and you swap out like, I don't know, like let's just say Sengun, let's say he's not ready yet for like Jokic, like you swap. That this team is like, take the rest of the roster as is. It's contender, right? That's
the better way to frame it is they have I would say 14 guys where they would be in any team's like rotation, like 12-man. Like you take 4, you would be in any rotation, that's wild depth.
Yeah, they have championship depth, but they don't have championship top end caliber players.
What's a funky lineup you would like to see them try this year?
A funky lineup. Let's go all guards. Let's go VanVleet. Let's go Green. Let's go Thompson. Let's throw out Jabari. Let's put in maybe even Reed. Like hell,
you want to play all guards?
Yeah. Slide Thompson down to the 4. Let's play Sengun and Amen next to each other. I mean, I guess that's pretty funky, right?
Yeah, I think I would like it to be Amen Thompson, Reed Sheppard, Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, and then I'm debating of how unhinged I want to be. I won't be too unhinged. I'll say Jabari Smith because then that gives me like some semblance of realism. But if I wanted to be like unhinged, I would say just like throw Jalen Green out there and say like just make Amen play the 5.
What limits this team a little bit with the lineups is the shooting, right? Yeah. Like if you just had one non-shooter, you get really fun with this. That's why it's tough for me to answer this question, to be honest. Like because you have 2 non-shooters that you have to account for, it's tough for me to get crazy with it. Like I'd like to, but you have to think about that as you form out lineups.
So as we record this on August the 23rd, their win total over under is set at 43.5. Are you taking the over or the under? And how many teams are you prepared to guarantee, or are you confident that they will be better than in the West this year?
That's a really good over under, man. I mean, I
feel like that's just like these people. There's a reason that Vegas might be good at this. I feel like I say that about every team.
Yeah, I mean, like I think they nailed that. But I will slightly take the over. I probably would say like 45 is where I'd land for win total. What was your second question?
How many teams do you like? Which teams do you look at in the West and say, okay, Houston will be better than them for sure?
Houston, I kind of have to think about it the other way. Who's going to be better than them for sure? So, OKC better than for sure. Denver better than them for sure. Utah, I think Houston has a chance to be better than them. I think. Hold on, let me look at this. The San Antonio for sure. They're going to be better than San Antonio. I feel pretty confident saying they're going to be better than San Antonio.
I think that's San Antonio, Portland, and Utah. I think might be the only teams I'm prepared to guarantee. Like I struggle with the Lakers and the Warriors of it all. Like I could even the Kings, even the Pelicans right now. I could see them just being mixed within that tier. And so if I had to pick a number of teams that I would guarantee, that Houston is better than, I would go with 3. I don't know that I'm willing to go higher than that.
Can I say I think there are 4 teams that they're better than, but I just don't know what the 4th team is yet.
I think it's fair to play the odds and say, oh, they'll be better than at least one of, let's say, I'm just names: Lakers, New Orleans, Warriors, Kings type deal. Like, it'd be fair to say that.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Pretty much. I was gonna narrow it down to like, I think they're gonna be better than one of LA or Golden State. And it's just a matter of who's healthier. And you're not gonna get perfect health from all these teams. But the thing with Houston is, even if you don't get perfect health from Houston, because they're so deep, they'll be fine. It's not gonna impact them much unless that health is Sengun. Right, Sengun is the one player where it's like, if you don't get perfect health from him, or if you don't get perfect health from Van Vliet, those are real factors. But everybody else, I'm sorry, I don't. It's crass to put it this way. If they get hurt, you can still have a really strong season.
So, Salman, I don't know the order in which these will be coming out, but so far we've got 10 in the books, and you have been the longest, and that should probably be whenever you and I get together, we just fucking ramble. But with that being said, is there anyone I didn't ask about, we didn't cover, that you think needs to be touched on? We didn't mention that Ime Udoka probably deserved more Coach of the Year love for reining in Dillon Brooks' shot selection on offense. That was not something that I foresaw coming, so shout out to that. But anything else you think that we need to discuss?
You want to know who did foresee it?
You did. You were. You know what you also foresaw? You were on the Alperen Sengun train long before anyone.
I don't want to do this anymore because I've done too many laps on this. But the Dillon Brooks thing, I'm gonna take credit because you look at Marcus Smart's shot selection with Ime Udoka versus with other coaches, you could see it. That's all I'm gonna say. I just want to say it. That's all I'm gonna say and leave it at that, because I don't want to take victory laps on this. On the Sengun thing, it happened. It's done. It's over. Let's move on. Let's all be Team Sengun.
Even the negative feedback loop to which all of us content creators are subject to, you should take as many damn victory laps as you want. That's my official stance.
I want us all to enjoy Sengun. I don't want to make him polarizing.
Yeah, he's polarizing for no reason though. Why is he polarizing?
We know what it is. I mean, but I don't want to make I don't want to make it more polarizing, right? Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be vague, but you know what it is, right? Like we can just leave it at that.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss before I let you skedaddle?
No, I'm good. Should be a fun season. It's gonna be a fun Rocket season.
This team is. I haven't done my League Pass rankings podcast yet, but they're gonna be like very close to the top because I have so many questions that I don't have answers for with them in a good way.
Yeah. I mean, and I just enjoy having another non-pressure Rocket. Is there anybody expecting anything like other than like, oh, they're going to be scrappy? Is anyone saying like they're going to be a playoff team? Like,
my guess would be that after winning 41 games and getting Reed Sheppard and seeing what Amen Thompson and Cam Whitmore did last year, I would cut like. You're better in touch, but doesn't the Rockets fan base probably think that this is a team that can finish in the top 6?
Does the national audience think like that's
no? I think look, the West is too like people have just forgotten that Memphis at full strength exists, right? And so it's like between Memphis, Minnesota, Denver is still there. Like Phoenix got better, and they won almost 50 games while not having really a fun season. The Clippers are fading out, but the Mavericks are on the rise. And like the Kings technically got better. There's just the West is such a jumble that it wouldn't shock me if you told me the Rockets got 6th place, but they're like, I think you need to be realistic and say,
to be clear, I don't blame anyone for that. Like that's where I'm at too. But what I'm saying is this is the sweet spot for fandom, right? No expectations to like, and it's still fun. It's still a good team, right? You got one more year of like, okay, like no one really cares, right? And then, the next year it's really where stuff picks up. As soon
as you pay that first guy of your own, I know they paid Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks, but that first guy that you pay of your own, that's when the pressure kicks in. By the way, I also think what's going to help keep expectations in check, I do think that the organization is going to prioritize, like, they're not going to try and be bad, but like they're going to make sure that they get extensive looks at all of these guys. Would be like Amen Thompson being more on, like they're going to experiment still, would be my gut feeling.
Yeah, and also like Rafael's getting freedom to do his job, right? Like that Phoenix trade was a very, very long-term trade. Like the way they built this roster out, very, very long-term driven, right? They didn't trade for a star the first opportunity they got. I like that. Let's keep it like that.
Salman, can you just tell our listeners quickly where they can find you and all the great work that you do?
RedNationHoops.com, at RedNationHoops on Twitter, at SoMileyNBA on Twitter. Not really doing much nowadays. I mean, right now, I'm keeping with the theme of the summer, in that it's boring and it's great. It's blissful. Let's be boring together.
And we leave it. Let's all be boring together. And with that,
Yeah.
Salman, thank you so much for all your time and insight. And as you know, I'll be pestering you again in the future for another 8-hour podcast.
Sorry to take an hour and a half out of your day.